I believe is I'm here to help up-level someone's consciousness. So this poem about self-love is called You Are Who You've Been Looking For. Triggered the deepest depression I'd ever experienced in my life, a suicidal depression.
Meet Adam Roa, an internationally celebrated spoken word artist, transformational coach, and known for his viral poem, You Are Who You've Been Looking For. He is the creator of Creative Path Podcast, and his documentary series, The Art of Choosing Love, offers a deep dive into conscious living.
You ultimately called in a $1 million coaching client.
I have 100% certainty that the right person taking my offer will have incredible results.
What male in your life, a father or a father figure, showed you what self-love looked like?
That's a really great question. I've never been asked that before. Treat yourself like someone you love.
I don't think I've ever really loved myself. Dude, I want to start crying right now. It feels good to be here with you.
Yeah, likewise, man. I'm glad we can make it happen.
2 questions. 1, would you share some spoken word with us? Is one question. And 2, I want to get to this topic of self-love, because I think that what we're weaving together so far, this idea of dance and this idea of what holds us back, is the perfect setup to talking about sharing our gifts with the world and learning to love ourselves through that. So do we want to start with the exploration of self-love and then go into a poem, or do we want to start with a poem?
Oh, I don't know, man. You're the host. You tell me what feels true. We can.
Let's start with the spoken word.
Okay. And specifically the one around self-love.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Got it. So this poem about self-love is called You Are Who You've Been Looking For. And yeah, I just invite everyone where you are to receive this as a transmission and a gift, and allow it to give you permission to love yourself a little bit more, in this moment. And if you can stop and be really present for it, that's great. If you're driving, keep your eyes open and take a nice deep inhale with me. And exhale. You are who you've been looking for. So stop looking for more unless you're looking in a mirror, because it's about time for you to see clearly that you are who you've been looking for. And that empty feeling you got, that hole in your chest, you only got that feeling because you think you're not blessed with everything you need. You see, we live in a consumerist society, which means they need you to buy stuff. And the easiest way to sell it is to tell you you're not enough. Buy this car, you'll get girls. Buy this bra, you'll get guys. And we're seeing it so much that we start believing these lies, but the truth is, the makeup they're selling to make you feel prettier is the same makeup you buy to stop feeling shittier about this lie they keep telling you that you are not enough. And what about the movies we watch? All the shows on TV. The more I watch, the more I see I need you to complete me. And yes, love is the answer. Love is the key. But if you can't love yourself, how can you ever love me? And loving yourself, what does that even mean? Like massages and selfies and that sort of thing? Because the more I think about it, the more it feels weird. I've always thought self-love was something to be feared. I've been taught that arrogance is bad and vanity, it's not good. And even my bracelets are telling me to act how Jesus would. So what should I do? How should I act? I'm supposed to love myself, but how do I even do that? Well, I got a trick that I picked up from a friend who noticed that I was quick to defend her when she'd say something negative about herself. She'd say, I'm so dumb. And I'd say, you're so brilliant. She'd say, I'm so weak. And I'd say, you're so resilient. And when she said, I feel ugly, and I said, you look beautiful, she asked me why I was so dutifully filling up her cup constantly and yet treating my own cup so irresponsibly. Because when I looked in the mirror, my voice was quite clear. You're ugly, you're too thin, your hairline's receding, and you got a pimple on your chin. And that was when she gave me a piece of advice that changed my life. She gave me a hug. And she said, treat yourself like someone you love. Treat yourself like someone you love. And now I had been standing, but I needed to be sitting because I couldn't believe that I had been letting myself keep forgetting that I was who I'd been looking for. And deep in my core, I knew it was time to stop looking for more until I could look through all my fear and look into a mirror and see clearly that the man looking back at me is the only one who can make me happy, and I am already enough. And I'm not any more special or unique than you. That's why I'm here to speak to you. You are already enough. And when you start to see that, you will start to be that. Your world will get brighter, your load will get lighter, and you can see that with life. You can be a lover, not a fighter. And that life, you deserve it because you are worth it. And so there's no point in letting yourself keep forgetting, because no matter what you say or do, you are perfect. And so today, I hope I leave you with a direction correction away from the flaws you see in your reflection. They aren't flaws to me. They are simply protection against all the doubts you have of your perfection. So start today. Take a good long look in the mirror and say, I am who I've been looking for.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's so good. I just really want to honor you for that, man. Just really grateful that you put that together and that you shared it with the world, man. It's so good. It's one of those poems I wish my kids will hear, you know, and it'll let it affect their lives in such a powerful way.
But that was my favorite thing. So that poem went viral. For people who don't know, You Are Who You've Been Looking For is the most viral live poetry performance in history. It's been viewed over 250 million times and counting. And the best thing about it was I got so many messages from people, and it was intergenerational. People were going, my mom sent this to me. It's so amazing. I had people saying, I sent this to my brother. I sent this to my grandma. She loves poetry. And it was just this thing where it didn't seem to matter the age. It didn't matter the gender or the race or the religion. It was just something that everyone was like, yes, I can get on board with that. And to know that a father would send it to their daughter and the daughter would send it to their mom, that it was just really special for me.
How did it change your life?
Well, it went viral. It went super viral. It did 40 million views in 48 hours.
Yeah.
And suddenly I was getting all these invitations, right, to speak at the Human Rights Foundation and Mind Valley and all of these things. And simultaneously, that poem going viral triggered the deepest depression I'd ever experienced in my life. Yeah. I had, you could imagine 40 million views in 48 hours, right? The number of messages that were coming in for months and months and months was insane. And 90% of them were very loving, just thank yous.
Were you trying to get through all of them? Were you trying to consume?
So at the time, I didn't have a social media. I had less than 5,000 followers on my Instagram. And so I answered every comment, every DM, everything at the time. I didn't have a team.
Yeah.
And so these messages were coming in, and I was trying to keep up.
Wow.
And I was seeing a lot of them, all of them. And I was working my way through them. And again, 9 out of 10, thank you. I love this. This means so much to me. It made me cry, etc. But 10% of them were messages from people who needed help. People saying, hey, I don't know how to love myself.
Yeah.
People saying, I'm suicidal. I've been thinking about killing myself. People saying, my husband abuses me, or my dad abuses me. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? And I had no way to help them. At the time, the only thing I was doing was one-on-one coaching and then my art. And I can't one-on-one coach all these people. I had no ebook. I had no course. I had no anything to offer to these people to help them. And I also realized I didn't have a real answer. They were asking me, I don't know how to love myself. And I was going, well, it's in the poem. Treat yourself like someone you love. But still, that's a concept. So the practical, what do you do on a daily basis? What does that look like? I didn't know how to answer them. And so suddenly I felt like a major fraud. And I went into deep imposter syndrome. I felt that all of these people who were messaging me for help, some of them suicidal, I said, they may kill themselves because I can't help them. I stopped being able to keep up with all the messages. So now I was going, I'm missing messages from people that need help that I don't even know. And it dropped me into a really dark depression, a suicidal depression. And while I was in that, I, at one point in time, basically had to make this decision, right? And we could go into all the different things I did ultimately, but I said, I believe that the answer is self-love. I do. And so even though I'm deeply depressed and I don't know what that necessarily looks like, I do believe the answer is self-love. So the solution is I need to love myself more. What does that look like? And that inquiry had me almost simplify it into what are all of the things that I know, the activities that I know that feel loving or I'm told are loving. And how do I just do more of them? And I started taking baths. I started dancing on my own. I really doubled down on my journaling practice. I screaming, crying, like allowing myself to emote, exercise, running. I hate running. And yet I knew that running would release, like cardio releases things that weightlifting won't. So all of these aspects, changing my eating, etc. Yes, I started also working with therapists and doing these things as well. But at one point I made a commitment to myself. I will not turn my phone on, because this is where this came from. I thought that I was toxic. I felt as though what I was going through was really toxic. It was a really dark thing. And so I said, I will not turn my phone on and communicate with the outside world on social media or anybody until I've at least shifted 1 degree from where I'm waking up. And that looked like sometimes 2 to 4 hours. The longest was 4 hours of straight self-love practices in the morning, waking up, before I even was able to turn my phone on.
Wow.
And so, yes, waking up, screaming, crying, taking a bath, doing a sauna, going for a run, coming back, journaling about it, dancing, everything that I could think of that felt like it was a loving act to myself. And that level of commitment slowly started to shift things for me. And eventually I made my way out of that depression and to a place where now I actually don't ever feel I will get back into depression. I don't have that anymore because I understand that depression. I understand that if I'm moving in that direction, it's because I've stopped loving myself. And so that's a long story, but just that poem taught me how to love myself.
So great. Talk to me about I don't actually know your relationship to your father, if there is one there, or a father figure, but the core of the question is, what male in your life, maybe when you were a kid, maybe when you're an adult, a father or a father figure showed you what self-love looked like? Did you have an example, somebody that you could point to and say, man, that's what it looks like, or that must be what it feels like?
That's a really great question. I've never been asked that before. So my dad is an immigrant from the Philippines, and the immigrant mentality is one of basically, I made so many sacrifices to give you a better life and more opportunity. And so I came to this country with nothing. And so you should be able to basically cure cancer, right? It's that idea. And he's from the Philippines. So there's also the Asian culture, which is its own sort of a thing. And it also came with physical discipline. And so it also came with a very stoic culture where by the time I was in my early 30s, I could list on one hand the number of times I remembered my dad saying, I love you. I also never saw, to this day, I've never seen romance between my parents. They're still married. Like they've been married 48 years. That aspect, I can learn a lot from making a relationship work for 48 years. And I've never seen romance. And so I learned work ethic from him. I learned sacrifice. My love language is acts of service, in large part because I saw that was his thing. And so there's a lot of beauty that I gained from my father, but I definitely wouldn't say it was self-love. that was not where I got it. And when you look at the trajectory where at the age of 33 years old, when this poem goes viral, I realize I don't know how to really love myself. Up until that point, I didn't have someone that taught me that.
Yeah.
And so when it became something that I became aware of, I sought out mentorship. I sought out mentorship in a lot of different places for a lot of different aspects and elements. And one of the pieces that, it's not a person, but a modality that changed my life was my art. And coming full circle back to, at that time, I had been making all of my poetry. If you look at my first album, so I have 2 albums on Spotify of my poetry. The first one's called Permission. And all of those poems are observational about what I was seeing in the world. So I have one called No More War, or Water is Life, which I wrote during Standing Rock, or Make America Think Again. And these pieces, even this You Are Who You've Been Looking For, is sort of observational about what's going on in society and how do we love ourselves. And during this window of time, suddenly my art became the place in which I needed to process what was happening internally before it ate me up inside.
Yeah.
And so if you look at my second album, The Journey Back to You, that album is all about love and relationships and deeply personal about what's happening inside myself.
Yeah.
And that shift of being able to use art to process what was happening inside myself happened during that window of learning how to love myself.
Fellas, if you're like me and you're serious about leveling up as a dad, well, I've got something for you. It's called our Brotherhood Experience. It's a no-cost, no-commitment way to see what Front Row Dads is all about, and where you'll get a chance to connect with other guys like you who are focused on being family men with businesses instead of businessmen with families. Through the experience, you get a deep dive into our core values, what drives our community, and who this brotherhood is truly for. And trust me, by the end, you'll know exactly if this is your tribe or not. If you're ready to give it a shot, head on over to frontrowdads.com/experience to sign up for a free event, and we'll see you there. Again, that's frontrowdads.com/experience. Now let's get back to the show.
How would you teach your kids about self-love? How would you model it? How would you talk about it? What would it look like to try to carry this into their lives?
Well, what I will say to that is I plan on doing massive amounts of study of parenting when I get to that stage.
Yeah.
And so my answer may change as someone who's
course.
not a parent. But right now, I think the most important aspect of self-love is developing a relationship with yourself.
Totally.
People think of self-love, and this is the learning that really was a hard one for me, and why I didn't have an answer for people at the time, which is me included, and all these people reaching out saw self-love as either something you have or you don't, like a light switch. It's either on or it's off, and they go, I don't love myself. And that's actually not true. That's not how self-love works. Self-love is the byproduct of your relationship with yourself. And so think about your wife, for example, right? Your love is, and if you're going to measure it on a scale of 0 to 100, will be a byproduct of the relationship that you have. And if you take that relationship for granted, that number is going to go down. And if you nurture that relationship, that number is going to go up. And the same thing is true with our relationships with ourselves. And so I'm sure on this podcast, you've talked about the love languages before, the 5 love languages, right? So we have acts of service, gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, and physical touch. There's more than that, but those 5 simple ones. And just think about your relationship to yourself through that lens.
Yes.
And going, okay, do I spend quality time with myself?
Yep.
And most people, when they're alone, are scrolling social media, they're watching Netflix or sports or whatever, and that's all great and well and good, but that's not quality time. Similarly, if you were hanging out with your wife and say, hey, let's have a date, and then you spent all your time on your cell phone, that's not quality time.
Yeah.
In fact, that's more damaging. And so there's that, the physical touch. When's the last time you've actually treated your body like a solid stretch.
Right.
What does that look like for you to spend 30 minutes, just you and your body, not following some routine, but I'm just going to move my body and stretch it in ways that feel good. That's physical touch. And so your level of self-love will be directly correlated to that relationship you have with yourself. And so I would teach my kids that first and foremost, and then I would help them develop their relationship with themselves. I would help them understand how to ask really deep questions to themselves and start to listen to themselves. Most people want their body and their mind to just do whatever they say without thinking of it as a relationship and going, do you actually know how to listen to yourself?
Yeah.
Do you know what your body, because depression is the result of suppression. So I suppressed what my body was saying for years and years and years and years. And then that led to depression. Had I been able to listen to what I was saying, I would have been able to prevent myself from heading down in that road.
Dude, I want to start crying right now. I swear to God.
Go for it.
Dude, it's just, this is so important. This is so important. And I'm hearing you. I'm feeling this because of like my journey. Like I'm seeing myself in all of what you're saying. I'm feeling what I have felt. I think about all the times that I was numbing myself. I think about the questions that have led me to where I am right now, by the way, which is like, I really love myself right now.
Congratulations.
Thank you, man. And that's having such a profound impact in my marriage, such a profound impact with my children. And
how old are you?
I want it 49.
So how long did it take for you to be able to say that?
48 years.
Wow. Yeah, man.
Like this just happened.
Amazing.
Just happened.
Amazing.
And it's been such a journey to get to this point. And I've had like bright lights and, I've been playing in the plant medicine space for years and I've had coaches for years. And I stepped into the personal growth world hard in my 20s, investing tens of thousands of dollars in my 20s, going to Tony Robbins events, just anything I could get my hands on, just devouring books, learning psychology. Like I have been on the path. And honestly, nothing has held a candle to ultimate like connection to spirit and love. There has nothing. And then I say that and I realize I don't think I would have gotten to that point to say that had it not been for all those things, all the at-bats that didn't necessarily work. And all the things that took me out of consciousness and out of alignment and out of attunement, all the ways I numbed myself with alcohol for years and, and Netflix and all the things that I would just, and blame and wishing my wife would change. Please change yourself so that I can love myself better. It's like, and when I look back now, I'm like, wow, she really hung in there through a lot of the challenging things that I did and said. But yet here we are. And I'm so appreciative to be in this moment. And I was thinking, I brought up Hal earlier, and we were at Front Row Dads Live, which is our big event in December here in Austin. And he stood up. He was in the crowd, and we did a breathwork session that Stefanos led us through. And Hal stood up, and he's tears in his eyes, and he's just like, I don't think I've ever really loved myself. And he had this epiphany until now, until this moment. And again, here's a man in his 40s who's wildly accomplished, who's stood on stages all over the world and said in the audience, I don't know that I've ever really, really loved myself. And then I have literally hundreds of stories that back all this up. And it's just awesome to hear you talking about this. In fact, when I was taking the deep dive into Adam's life, and learning all about you, and we had been at the same parties and the same places, and I knew who you were, I know your friends, but I was really leaning in. And I was so impressed by who you've developed yourself to be. And I think that honestly, when I first met you, I was probably like in judgment of you or intimidated by you in a way or hesitant to lean into you in a way. Probably because you embodied some of the things that I wish I had. And so I want to tell you that I don't feel that way anymore.
Oh, thank you.
I just feel a lot of love for you and adoration and respect for who you've become truly. And the more that I lean in, the more it feels that way. Even our podcast director was like, I sent him your link and I'm like, check this guy out. And he's like, dude, the more I'm listening, the more I love him. And I said, I think that's probably a feeling that a lot of people have.
Thank you, bro. That
So-
means a lot. I appreciate that. And yeah, I don't know what to say. It's I'm getting a little emotional in this moment just because I don't know the amount of work that it took. The amount of work that it took.
Yes.
People, I've tried to share very vulnerably and authentically throughout the whole journey. I have a YouTube reality show called The Art of Choosing Love that I made during that time of depression. It's my breakdowns and all of this stuff. My poetry is deeply personal, and I share in that way. And yet, even with all that I share, the tear-filled nights contemplating suicide, the consistent times of feeling as though it's never going to be enough, the fear that no matter what I do, I will always have this demon that just is here talking and talking and trying to suck me back in. And yeah, that the amount of work, and I think why I'm getting emotional around this is because I love myself. I really do. And I also know that it's still a journey. It's not as though it's sometimes easier to think about it in relationship to someone else, but it's I love my wife, right? You love your wife, and there are days you just want to throw her out a window, like that happens too.
Well documented.
And so similarly, I love myself. I'm so grateful for my life, and there are days still where I look at, we're in Austin, we have a lot of mutual friends, and I look at what some of these guys have done, and I'm going, wow, I have the most viral poem in history, and I haven't done that. I haven't turned it into this or that. Like, wow, I really wasted this, or I judge myself for this, or the number of people who want to partner with me and say, yo, what do you want to sell? That's the question. What is your offer that you're selling? And if you look at all the different things I've done over the years, even right now, you wouldn't necessarily know what it is that I'm selling. Based on this conversation, you would think, oh, he probably should sell something about self-love, like a self-love course. Yeah, that might make sense. But I'm simultaneously the part of me that loves the fact that I'm just open to surrender into the flow of where it goes, and that the part that can judge and that can shame and guilt and blame. And I'm still very human. And so I really appreciate the reflection. And I just want people to hear that even someone you may now really respect more and more and more still has that side that is, to me, very human.
Yeah.
It's very human to have that.
Yeah. When that comes up, do you take yourself for a walk? Do you have somebody you call?
Depends how big it comes up. One of the things that I've been becoming more attuned to over the years is I was in a 10-year relationship from 23 to 33. I'm 39 now. And when that relationship ended, what I learned was that I didn't know how to love myself. I didn't know how to hold my own heart. So I had basically said, here, hold this.
Yeah.
I don't know how to hold this. I don't know what to do with this. Please hold it. And I found someone who, for the first time in my life, I felt safe enough to give my heart to.
Yeah.
But when she was no longer holding it and it was back in my hands, I had no idea what to do with it. And so I'm sometimes careful because during those 10 years and following that, I still had my tendency to look outside myself for the answer for when I was having a bad day, or when I was going through a tough time, or had a question I couldn't solve. And there's a balance you know, and I have people that I call in those moments, and I encourage people, don't suffer in silence, don't do it on your own.
Yeah.
But also I'm paying a lot of attention to when, oh, this is one of those nights where I feel super lonely. And the reason why I want to call a friend right now is just because I feel uncomfortable in the loneliness. And the actual thing that's needed is for me to be with myself in the loneliness. And that's what's actually needed here. And so, yeah, I dance. And I also will say that I work with a lot of mentors, and I have a coach. I also have a spiritual advisor. And so like I am getting support too.
Yeah. Interestingly that you bring this up about like, can you hold your own heart? When I saw you at a mutual friend's house one time, that was a moment that was a gathering that I had a feeling of like, oh, I want a hug from Tatiana right now. And then I thought, wait a minute, like, can I get me, you know? And I just put my hand on my heart for a moment. And I was like, let me just get you, John. Right. Like you may not even need a hug from Tatiana. And I think that sometimes that's my go-to in a social situation where I'm like, I don't know who to go talk to. I don't know what to do next. I'm going to go hug my wife, like my home base. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it was wild for me. It was the first time I ever just put my hand on my heart and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I can get myself right now.
Yeah.
And just hold my own heart for a moment.
And what that does is help you realize that the hug you want from her is not a need.
Yeah.
The hug you want from her is truly from a place of, I really want this thing. It adds so much value to my life. Whereas when it's a need, because you can't do that for yourself.
Yeah.
You're now down a path of codependency. You're down a path of toxicity. You're down a path where you almost lose the ability to be truly authentic with each other in relationship, because the fear of what happens if this person leaves becomes so all encompassing that there are aspects of you that you now need to potentially hide or put away, or not say the truth that you're actually feeling. And I relate that to as coaches, right? The coach who needs the client in order to pay their rent can't actually show up in full coaching power, because sometimes you have to say shit that might make that client want to quit. You could lose a client because you revealed a truth so hard for them to take that they're just a no. But that is what's needed to be to really show up. And so it's just a kind of analogy to help people see that the needs you put on your partner can actually take you out of your ability to show up as powerfully as you could.
Yeah, big time. But thank you, man. You've said so much, and I really appreciate you being here, sharing your heart with us. Anything else you want to say before we go?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for having me on. This has been a great conversation. And I appreciate what you're doing. I obviously lit up so much talking about being a dad. And I think that dads listening to this in an effort to become better men is so needed and so awesome. And I look forward. I know we've talked about potentially collaborating on some things in the future. I'm excited about that. And the one final thing that I would say to people is that it's possible. You know, I wasn't born into money. I wasn't born into emotional intelligence. I wasn't born into any of this stuff. And it's possible for you. It's possible for anyone who's willing to walk through the initiatory gauntlet that it will require. But if you're willing to do that, it's possible. And you may need community to do that. I did. You may need help, but that's fine. Go get it. Don't let that stop you.
Thanks for listening today, fellas. If you got value from this episode, I ask that you take 1 second right now and you share this with another dad in your life that you respect, that you know is committed to becoming a better man, family man, and businessman. And on that note, I want to honor you for choosing growth. Your family will thank you years from now for all the effort that you're putting in to learn the strategies so you can show up more fully for them today. Take care.